Good evening, ladies and gents. This is Hot Route with me, the King of Spice, Bo McBrayer. Of course, we are brought to you on Going for Two Live. So shout out Going for Two Live, Jeff Lambert and the gang. We are on YouTube and every streaming platform you can think of. There's probably others that I can't even think of, but go ahead and go to YouTube especially and subscribe that. Get your alerts set up for this show and every other show on Going for Two Live. We got a great crew. Hot Route is a dynasty fantasy football show focused on the rookie class of 2022. This is episode 4. We're going over the tight end class of 2022. And I kind of took a sigh of relief this week because last week was so daunting to go through an entire show solo going over such a deep class of wide receivers. We went over a dozen wide receivers that I was willing to take in a 4-round rookie draft for dynasty fantasy football. And thankfully, the tight end class of 2022, it doesn't have any Kyle Pittses or Pat Freiermuths even. And so I was able to narrow it down to 5 tight ends in this class that I was going to look to draft in fantasy football, especially dynasty, where I'm looking for the upside. I'm looking for the guys. As a tight end, I don't want them to be that good of a blocker. Very simply put, I mean, look how amazing George Kittle is. And his stock drops because of how good of a blocker he is. It's ludicrous to think, but the tight end position might have the biggest disparity between real football and fantasy football because we covet the guys who are bad at half of their job. Well, the hot routes, in case this is the first time you're joining us at episode 4, we are going to go over these 5 tight ends. We're going to give them a spice score from 1 to 5 peppers, and that just represents me watching the film, breaking down the analytics, how good of a pro I think they're going to be, how good of a prospect are they entering the NFL. 5 guys today. I'll keep it brief. We're not going to have a whole lot of ground to cover, but I want to get you guys out of here and onto your rookie draft. Some of you guys are animals and you're already drafting rookies. I just did a mock draft for Fantasy Pros where the rookies were mixed in, and instead of doing placeholder picks, I went just tried to fill it in where the rookies were going to go in the full-on draft as if they had already been drafted and they're in the NFL. So sight unseen, no landing spots to speak of yet. But I'm glad that we can get to these prospects before the draft happens, and then we can kind of rehash things as the landing spots happen to see if anybody rises or falls. So the spice score from 1 to 5 peppers, I'll go over some of their strengths and weaknesses. And of course, the favorite part of mine is to give them a player comparison to an NFL player, past or present, from my convoluted mind. It's the most fun I have setting up for the show is figuring out some crazy comps for these rookies. Without further ado, let's jump into my tight end 1 of the 2022 rookie class, and that is Trey McBride from Colorado State. Shout out the Klugies out there. They're over there in Fort Collins, Colorado, next to the campus of Colorado State. Colorado State didn't have a terrible year in the Mountain West. They were kind of middle of the pack. They weren't anything crazy, but one player that stood out because he was, quite frankly, their entire offense was Trey McBride, who measured at 6'3.5". That was nearly 2 inches. I mean, if you're rounding up to 6'4", like a lot of these sites I'm seeing, that's a full 2 inches more taller than some of the sites had him listed before he went to Indianapolis and did some of the working out and measurements. When's the last time you've heard of a college underestimating a guy's height? Especially for a tight end where you want a guy that's 6'4", 6'5", maybe 6'2" with some length to him. Hi, Kyle. Trey McBride is taller. He's 6'3", almost 6'4", 246 pounds. He's got humongous hands, 10 1/8 inch hands. That's one of his best traits. This guy is an absolute vacuum cleaner in the receiving game. He had 90 catches for 1,121 yards, and he was the Kyle Pitts of the Mountain West because with 90 catches and 1,100 yards receiving, he had one receiving touchdown last season. How is that possible? Don't ask me. I was watching the tape and he had 2 total touchdowns. The first one was his only receiving touchdown, and the second one was on the very last play of his college career on a fake punt where he took it 69 yards, nice, for a touchdown to wrap up his career against the Nevada Wolfpack in that game. And that was kind of the first chance I got to see him full on get to full speed. He was a three sport star in high school, football, of course, baseball, basketball. He's just a great athlete. He's not the fastest guy in the world. I don't look at him and see Kyle Pitts because he's not a 4.4 guy. He's probably a 4.65 to 4.75 guy. Just watching the tape, he didn't run in Indianapolis. That was probably smart because there was nothing to gain there from running. And really, to be honest, at the tight end position, as long as you're not running over 5 seconds in the 40, you can be an effective receiver. And they're going to just look at the tape to see, okay, can he block? Is he a willing blocker? And what does he look like running routes? So far, Trey McBride is the best overall route runner in this class. He's got incredible hands. This guy catches everything, and he catches with his hands. You're going to hear me all over the running backs and the wide receivers for catching balls with their bodies, and that doesn't translate to the NFL at all. Trey McBride, right there, baby. Great hands, strong hands, catches in traffic, catches as he's taking contact. He's got Velcro on his gloves. It's one of those Nerf balls with Velcro on the outside. He catches everything. Great catch radius. He's a decent blocker. I'm not going to say he's a great blocker because really this is a guy that I like so much as a 4-pepper. There you go. I forgot to give you guys the 4-pepper score. As a 4-pepper prospect, I'm just hoping that he gets to the league and he's a serviceable enough blocker to not lose snaps because he's a liability in that department. I think he's good enough as a blocker to be on the field quite a bit. As a starter in his rookie season, whether or not the statistics for fantasy come through in his rookie year, that's probably unlikely because of the learning curve at the position in the NFL. He's not Kyle Pitts or Mike Gesicki, who's going to be more of a wide receiver anyway. He's built like a tight end. He plays like a tight end. And he just needs to be better at breaking out of his routes. After the catch, this guy is an absolute wrecking ball. My favorite thing besides his hands for Trey McBride is his ability to get under opponents' skin. So you know how we've all seen the mic'd up of George Kittle where he talks a bunch of trash, but he's usually really nice about it. I don't think Trey McBride's very nice when he talks trash. He's like George Kittle with the dark side, and that's kind of the comp is George Kittle with a backpack full of rocks. He's a wrecking ball after the catch. He's got decent speed and athleticism, but he's a competitor, and he's going to be out there jaw jacking. He's going to be out there yakking at these guys. He's going to be running after the catch, breaking tackles, talking all the way. He's going to be a lot like Draymond Green in the NBA where he's talking, and he's going to be the kind of guy that opponents really hate. Like you're going to love to have him on your team, but you're going to hate if you're playing against him. Trey McBride, tight end 1 in this class. It's pretty close with the tight end 2. They're just kind of different players in a way. Number 2, Jalen Weidermeier from Texas A&M. He is another 4-pepper prospect. I think just a slight drop below McBride in this class. He's 6'4", 255, so a little bit more bulk to him. He's a good route runner. Running after the catch for him as well. Just get out of the way. He's a runaway freight train after the catch. He's a big play guy. I think he's faster than McBride. He's got more explosive ability than McBride. He's not as good of a route runner as McBride, like savvy-wise, but he's always looking to break big plays after the catch with that athleticism. he's just a humongous dude. You watch this guy on tape, and where McBride kind of looks shorter, which is kind of why it was more surprising to see him at 6'4" instead of 6'2", 6'3". Weidermeier looks like he's 6'8" on the field. He's just massive. He's a huge dude, and he makes big plays. He runs well. His hands aren't quite as good as Trey McBride's. He does have some drops in traffic, or he just doesn't look quite as strong at the catch point. He catches a few more balls with his body instead of like McBride, where it's all hands all the time. He's not a strong blocker. That's kind of where I'm going with this. Is he might be the kind of guy that needs to be in that flex out move tight end position where he's not going to be in line very often, because as a run blocker especially, he's a liability. Not as strong as his frame looks like. He's the kind of guy where if he's staying into chip block, he's going to get pushed around, which doesn't make any sense because he's humongous. But as a slot receiver, like a gigantic slot receiver or an H-back running routes, he's going to be a dangerous weapon for some teams that love to air it out. Texas A&M just love to get him in the middle of the field and watch him just wreck shop like a bull in the china shop. I don't know if a lot of you watching might not know who this is, but the older folks in the crowd, and I'm turning 35 on Monday, but the older folks in the crowd definitely know who I'm talking about. Algae Crumpler. Jalen Weidermeier looks exactly like Algae Crumpler out there. And if you remember back when Michael Vick was a young player, rookie, first couple of years in Atlanta, his favorite red zone target was Algae Crumpler. And he had Jamal Anderson and all those guys run the football with him. He had some good wide receivers, but Algae Crumpler, one of the coolest names in football history, was a great red zone threat at tight end. He had some great athleticism after the catch. Jalen Weidermeier and Algae Crumpler, they're clones. So give me Jalen Weidermeier as my tight end 2. He's in landing spot, might take him over Trey McBride, to be honest. Trey McBride might end up in a situation where he's expected to block more. And I don't think a team that picks Jalen Weidermeier is going to expect that out of him. So we'll have to see how things fall in the draft between these two guys who I figure are a full tier above the rest of them. Going to tight end 3, Isaiah Likely, and he plays for the Chanticleers of Coastal Carolina. And the Sun Belt Conference is not known for a ton of NFL talent, especially Coastal Carolina. Even though Grayson McCall next year as a quarterback prospect, you're gonna want to pay attention to him. Isaiah Likely is a 6'4", 240-pound tight end, and kind of like McBride, except better. He's even better. He's probably the best blocking tight end of the guys who have receiving ability that translates to the NFL level. Great blocker. He will earn snaps because of his blocking ability. And that's good and bad. For fantasy football, you're kind of a little uneasy because we've seen so many guys make good money as tight ends in the NFL. Jonnu Smith. And they're only expected to run a few routes per game. They're useless for us in fantasy unless somebody gets hurt and then another person gets hurt. But just like with Jonnu Smith, he's so good of a blocker that he almost gets forgotten in the passing game, no matter how athletic he is. And Isaiah Likely is very athletic. He is a decent route runner. He's one of the freak athletes out there, 6'4", 240. And he's a 3-pepper guy for me. I think he's a solid option, depending on landing spot. But I have a feeling he's going to go to one of these teams like Cleveland or even Atlanta that's going to run a lot of 12 personnel. Minnesota, especially now that Tyler Conklin moved on. So one of these teams that runs a lot of 12 personnel is going to pick up Isaiah Likely late or middle to late draft, and he's going to be blocking a lot. And that's unfortunate because he is a decent route runner. He's extremely athletic. He's going to put up some decent numbers sporadically at the NFL level as a receiver. He's a body catcher. Ugh, gosh, I wanted to give Isaiah Likely a 4-pepper rating, but unless you're going to just basically throw a 5-yard in route and just hope that the big man can rumble for a few more yards after the catch. He's not going to catch well in traffic. He's not going to out leap and moss somebody because he's got the catch radius. That catch radius shrinks dramatically when you catch the ball with your body. And Isaiah Likely, sorry, you went down from 4 to 3 peppers because you're a body catcher, and I can't stand body catchers. Despite your great blocking ability and your athleticism, you got to have better hands. You got to reach out and use your length to your advantage. He's not that great at boxing out either. He's not that basketball type that you're looking for at a tight end as a receiving option. But he's intriguing. I mean, he's got the potential to develop into a better receiver, especially with that blocking background. The guy is an absolute bowling pin or bowling ball when it comes to the run blocking, especially. He took some souls out there in the Sun Belt last season. Number 4, another 3-pepper prospect, and I think has the potential to become a 4-star or 4-pepper prospect. 3 peppers for Cole Turner out of Nevada, the Wolfpack. You might have noticed he's the guy in all of the Carson Strong film that just jumps off the tape out of the tight end position. And really, because Nevada runs air raid, it's more of a wide receiver 3, big, gigantic slot receiver, 6'6", 246, just a humongous kid. Savvy, smart route runner. He's not the most athletic guy out there. Like, his speed and quickness, they're average. I'm not going to say he's gifted in any way as an athlete compared to some of these guys, but savvy and smart running routes, the dude is always open. And he's got vice grips for hands. Here it is. He's a hands catcher, and he's one of the best. He's up there with McBride as a hands catcher. Way out there, 6'6", long arms, snatching the ball out of the air, away from his body, away from the defenders. His catch radius is humongous. This guy is another check in the box here. If you're a hands catcher and you have a basketball background, now we got ourselves a bingo card worth playing here as a tight end. Cole Turner out of Nevada. Like I said, did I just say 6'6", 246? Basketball background, catches the ball with his hands, and he's a deep ball tracking A+ grade. Get him up the seam with adequate speed up the seam, and he is an absolute weapon, especially in the red zone, posting up on guys, leaping out of the stadium, high pointing the ball with his hands. That's all good because he can't block. Not a good blocker. And that's kind of the reason why I think he has the potential to become a 4-star fantasy tight end or 4-pepper fantasy tight end. I don't want to get in any trouble, But weapon in the red zone as a receiver. He's not that fast or quick or strong. I mean, I just think athletically he's average. But he's huge. He's savvy. He's smart. Basketball background. Catches with his hands. And he can't block. So what are you going to do with a guy who can't block that has all these other traits? You're going to split him out in the slot, out wide, man-to-man coverage on smaller DBs, and you're going to create a matchup problem. And that's what the NFL is all about, is creating matchup problems for the defense, giving the defensive coordinator fits, because you got to figure out how to cover the 6'6" tight end who can jump and box out. Cole Turner, one of my favorite guys to get late, fourth round, even late third round of my rookie drafts. Nobody's on him. Some guys have him down out of their top 10 tight ends, which is unthinkable with his receiving talent and his ability to get open. Very last guy here. This one is borderline 2/3 peppers. I'll give him the round up to 3 peppers because of his combine performance, which showed that this guy is an absolute freak. Chig Okonkwo. I said it right the second time. Chig Okonkwo, NC State, 6'2.5", 238. His arms are long, but he plays like he's got short arms. Not a problem. He just ran a 4.52 at the combine. so he can fly. That's with that size, that boy's moving, and he's fast. He's a freak athlete, and he's very strong. His run after the catch ability is terrifying. He's one of the best after the catch in this class for any type of receiver, because he's roughly the same size as a receiver that we covered last show, Treylon Burks out of Arkansas, but he's got a 2.5 inch vert advantage over Treylon Burks, and he weighs 10 more pounds, and he ran about the same 40 as Treylon Burks. And although I'm not going to give him the benefit that he's as good as Treylon Burks at a lot of the receiving traits, because Okonkwo is a very raw player here. You could tell he's rounding into form right at the right time. He's an exciting prospect with a ton of athleticism. He needs to run better routes. He's not a blocker. He's got average hands. He drops a lot of passes, focus related, form related, catches some with his body, some with his hands. He's all over the place. But NC State did a great job of running a lot of screens. They just get the ball in the guy's hands and he takes off, and he's not fun to tackle because he's fast, he's physical, and he's just going to do whatever it takes to gain yards, chew up ground. And I want to give you his comp here. I gave you the other one. Oh man, I missed all the comps from Isaiah Likely downward. Isaiah Likely's comp, my tight end 3, tall Jonnu Smith. He's Jonnu Smith but taller. Cole Turner's comp, late stage Jason Witten. He's not as good of a blocker, and you could see when Jason Witten aged, he was still magical at getting open. He caught everything in sight, but he couldn't block anymore, so they didn't expect him to. So late stage Jason Witten is Cole Turner, and then Chig Okonkwo is, I was kind of back and forth on this one. 6'2.5", 238. He reminds me a lot of Vernon Davis, but he's not even. This is crazy. Is Chig Okonkwo is a very, very scary athlete, and he's still nowhere near as athletic as Vernon Davis. So I'll give him a Vernon Davis light tag because he does play like Vernon Davis, a lot less polished. He might develop into something like that. Hopefully he stays healthy better than Vernon Davis did. But that's my comp, is Vernon Davis light, because Vernon Davis is one of the most freakish athletes in NFL history. We're talking a 4.4 guy. Insanity. But Chig Okonkwo, he could develop into something really special. I'm getting him at the very end of the 4th if in rookie drafts. Really, for as fast as he ran at the combine, he's not getting a lot of publicity for it. He's not getting a lot of play for it. And pop in the tape. Pop in the NC State tape. He's going to flash every once in a while, like not as often as you would hope for a guy. Like, he's not nearly as productive as your Trey McBride or your Jalen Weidermeier. He's definitely not as productive as Cole Turner in his college career, but you fast forward to the plays where he actually got the targets and he got the passes and he caught them. He's must-see TV after the catch. So give me Chig Okonkwo. There's a lot of other tight ends that are really good blockers, or they're not good blockers and they're decent receivers. I'm not interested. At least not for fantasy. I'm not wasting a rookie draft pick of any sort on any of the other players. So no offense to Greg Dulcich out of UCLA, or Ruckert out of Ohio State, or Cade Otton out of Washington. I'm just not interested in Dynasty unless they land somewhere really perfect and they start showing up in camp. They have a big preseason. It could change, but none of those guys really excite me for fantasy football. This class is quite a bit more shallow than the recent past classes, 19, 20, 21. But these 5 guys have a lot of potential as far as receiving ability, especially if Isaiah Likely gets some receiving chops here. That'll be fun because he can really run after the catch. if he learns to catch with his hands. Anyway, that's all I have. 25 minutes, not bad at all. 5 guys, tight ends. I'm thinking wrap it up. Give you guys the rest of your Friday night. It's only 7:25 Pacific time, so all you on the East Coast, thanks for joining me late night Friday night. Have a great night. Thanks for joining me on Hot Route with King of Spice on Going for Two Live.